This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I am Jason and this is Sports Spectrum. Our website, sportspectrum.com. It's a great place to bookmark. Check out all of the content here at Sports Spectrum. And do you realize that we have a Sports Spectrum podcast network now, which is really great because we got a bunch of shows, including a show called Football Sunday, which you can download. Again, all of these podcasts are available at sportspectrum.com and everywhere you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify or Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, they're all available. So Football Sunday's there. We got a show called Table 40, which is hosted by Matt Holliday and his wife Leslie. And that's a really fun podcast where Matt and Leslie interview other couples in the world of sports, talk about their faith in the Lord and family and certainly other things. And we just launched a brand new podcast in November 19th, a show called Recalibrated, just launched. And we want you to go subscribe and check out that podcast as well. Mallory Brown is the host. She is the wife of former NFL running back Donald Brown. She also helps lead our women's ministry here at Sports Spectrum and Pro Athletes Outreach. And Mallory is fantastic. And this show is really focused on the women in sports. Their very first episode was with Sarah Hasselbeck, who is Matt Hasselbeck's wife. Matt, of course, a longtime NFL quarterback. And see, what I love about Recalibrated is that Mallory is going to tell you the story, the recalibrated stories of the women behind the men in this sports world. And that's really where we're focusing on with Recalibrated. It's a great show. You need to go check it out. Subscribe today everywhere podcasts are found. Recalibrated with Mallory Brown. Our email address here at Sports Spectrum is jason@sportspectrum.com if you want to reach me directly for any other thoughts or suggestions or ideas for guests, whether it's for this show or for any of our Sports Spectrum podcast shows. You can email me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. Today's show is brought to you by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. Check them out at fillthestadium.com. They got a really great initiative right now to help children and their families in crisis. Fillthestadium.com. Compassion partnering with Pro Athlete Friends and Sports Spectrum to help meet these children and their families in need right now, especially because of COVID-19. Check it out at fillthestadium.com. We're also presented today by IJM, the International Justice Mission. Check them out at ijm.org/TF. The work that they do is so very important, helping to end slavery. Slavery, yeah, that word, it still exists in this world in 2020 and 2021. And you can join the fight with IJM right now to end slavery by going to their website, ijm.org/TF, to become a freedom partner. ijm.org/TF. Today on Sports Spectrum, we welcome Bryce Drew, the Grand Canyon University men's basketball coach. He just signed on to this job in 2020, March 17th, actually, to become Grand Canyon's head coach, replacing Dan Marley. Remember Dan Marley, the former NBA player? Bryce Drew replaced Dan at the current position at Grand Canyon University. Before that, he was the head coach at Vanderbilt from 2016 to 2019. His brother is Scott Drew, and he's the coach at Baylor. Before Vanderbilt, Bryce was a three-time Horizon League Coach of the Year with Valparaiso in 2012, 2015, 2016. He led Valpo to 2 NCAA Tournament bids, replacing his dad, Homer Drew, the longtime head coach. And Bryce has a really interesting path to coaching because if you're a basketball fan at all, you remember 1998, Bryce Drew had his one shining moment, his March Madness moment, hitting the game-winning shot for the number 13 Valparaiso team over number 4 Ole Miss in the 1998 NCAA Tournament. Anytime you hear one shining moment or you see anything regarding March Madness, they show Bryce Drew's game-winning shot. He was a heck of a basketball player, too. Indiana Mr. Basketball in 1994, two-time Mid-Continent Conference Player of the Year in 97 and 98, had his number 24 jersey retired by Valpo, and then went to the NBA. Was a first-round pick by the Houston Rockets in 1998, 16th overall, and played with the Rockets, Bulls, and Hornets in a 6-year NBA career before going into coaching, where he was an assistant with Valpo before becoming their head coach. Bryce Drew is our guest today. This is a lot of fun. Take a listen to Bryce joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. Bryce Drew, welcome to Sports Spectrum, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing great this morning. Thanks for having me on, Jason.
It's good to see you. Good to talk to you here on a Zoom. Let's start off with what 2020 has been like for you. Just from a coaching perspective, you got a new job back in March, and it's exciting to be with Grand Canyon, and you got a new opportunity in front of you to coach and do what you like to do and be a basketball coach. But it's also been crazy pretty much since you were introduced in terms of the pandemic and COVID. What's it been like to try and navigate a new job in this climate that we've been in?
You kind of summed it up well. It's been very exciting for myself and my family, coming to Phoenix, which is gorgeous, and coming to an unbelievable school in GCU. It's a faith-based school that has just had sensational rapid growth. I tell the president sometimes if it was in biblical times, this story might be in the Bible with how quickly this university has been growing down here. But then the other side is the challenges, the challenges of moving across the country from Nashville, Tennessee, to Phoenix, Arizona, amidst, the pandemic going on. And then also trying to get associated with a new team and new players when you can't do a lot of, facial interaction, especially for those first few months that we had the job.
Bryce Drew is joining us here on Sports Spectrum. Let me ask you about what this has been like from, a faith perspective, now that you're at a school that is a faith-based school. Not that you couldn't be a Christian at Vanderbilt or you couldn't be a Christian at Valparaiso, but that's not the case here. They're a Christian school and they're open about it. So does that change how you can go about coaching, or is it really the same that you've kind of been doing in the past?
We go about the same way, how we treat our players and how we run our program. The nice thing is publicly we can, talk more about our faith, being at Valparaiso, we could have easier, Bible studies with the team and team prayer, which now, at GCU, we can do those things, which is great from a coaching perspective. Our staff is, a staff that fit the commitment and what GCU is about. So it's just been very, very nice to be able to just be ourselves on a daily basis with our team and on our campus.
Can you share a little bit about that faith and, first of all, why it's important to you, but kind of maybe walk us through the journey of becoming a Christian? I know a lot of people grew up as Christians, but there's still a moment where they got to kind of make that faith their own. Can you kind of share your journey a little bit?
It's been an ongoing journey. I think as I reflect, there's so many points in my life where, my faith took a step up and I grew closer to God. I would say my very first encounter where, I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and when it became my faith and not my parents, was when I was in high school, and my sophomore year of high school. I had a heart condition that required a heart surgery. And I still remember laying, on the operating table, and the little place in the mirrors blocked off. And my mom gave me a verse, Psalm 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God." And I remember I looked in that mirror and I was like, "Be still and know that I am God." And basketball was my life. Like, that's all I did all the time. And I was going to wake up from that surgery, and I was either going to, be perfectly fine, be able to play. I was going to have a pacemaker because it was too close to, my heart. They couldn't really fix it. Or I had to sign papers going in because it was a newer procedure. Basically, if I pass away, we can't sue the doctors. Right. And so, it kind of made me grow up early and realize, what, like when I open my eyes, I have no control over what's going to happen in my life. And from then on out, if my parents were out of town, couldn't go to church, I wanted to go, learn more about the Lord and grow in my faith. And so that was my first step. But, there's been other steps along the way where, I think God's really shown me, his presence and just how he's in control, no matter if it's a good circumstance, I feel like, or a bad circumstance. As I get through it, I see where God was working throughout the whole process.
You were Mr. Basketball at Indiana in 94, and you go to Valpo, and I think people remember the shot, of course, in 98, but you were actually the player of the year in 97 and 98 and had a really good career, and your number was retired. How did Valpo help shape you, not as far, because you played for your dad as well, just about being a believer in Christ, being a man, and certainly basketball being, because I talk to a lot of players, and I was going to say identity, because a lot of guys struggle with their identity who are followers of Christ when they have success kind of spurned on them. And you had a lot of success as a basketball player. What was it like navigating that life back when you were, a young dude back in your late teens and early 20s?
There were definitely things, that you wrestle with, sometimes, especially in college, when you're growing in your faith and really trying to learn more, about the Lord and what he has for your life, there would be some setbacks, and sometimes those setbacks, you balance, like, why does this happen? When you're following the Lord, and eventually, you see how he's molding us and making us, more like him, and making us into the person and the vessel that he wants us to be. So there was definitely some of those in college, but I believe that, it really helped me, again, being in an environment of faith, and being able to have mentors on that campus, including my dad, who was the head coach, I would hear truth, and you would hear it on a daily basis. So it became part of your habits and part of who you were. And I'm extremely thankful for the people in my life during that time, that I even recall still now, that just getting the truth of the Bible spoken into you, whether it's in class, theology class, where it really challenged you to think more, or again, the daily message before practice, it helps you become, shape kind of the character who you are and what you believe as you move forward.
Quick break from our conversation to tell you about IJM, the International Justice Mission, sponsors and partners with us here at Sports Spectrum, believing every person deserves to be safe and free from violence. The International Justice Mission, partnering with local authorities to rescue victims of violence, bring criminals to justice, restoring survivors, and strengthening justice systems. They are helping to protect IJM as more than 150 million people around the world from violence and oppression. But it's work that they cannot do alone. They need your help. They need our help, the help of Freedom Partners, some of IJM's most loyal partners in the work of justice. And their support of $24 or more each month helps survivors of slavery and violence from the moment they're rescued until they are fully restored. You can join the fight right now to end slavery in our lifetime by visiting the website ijm.org/TF to become a Freedom Partner today. ijm.org/TF. We're also presented today by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. And Compassion right now has a great initiative called Fill the Stadium. And I want you to think about this. COVID-19, right? It's left so many in crisis, but it's left children around the world who are living in poverty in deep, deep trouble. Issues of food have gone from hunger to starvation. The pandemic has magnified these needs. And think about Compassion and what they're about, right? This past spring, most of the events that Compassion International relies on to help sponsor these children in crisis were canceled due to COVID-19. And it's left nearly 70,000 kids in desperate need of help. Well, 70,000 also happens to be the average size of many pro football stadiums that were once filled and now sit mostly empty. Each of these 70,000 empty seats represents a child in crisis who needs you, who needs us to step up and fill the stadium. Here's what you can do. Go to the website, fillthestadium.com. That's the website, fillthestadium.com. You can team up with Compassion International and their pro athlete friends to help these kids in crisis. This is a stadium that cannot remain empty. Go to fillthestadium.com, click Give Now, and help release these kids from poverty in Jesus' name. fillthestadium.com. Bryce Drew is joining us here on Sports Spectrum. People are probably yelling at me. How can you not start with asking him about the 98 March Madness buzzer beater shot? And I'm like, he's probably asked that question multiple times every single day for the last 22 years. Am I off on that, or is that pretty accurate?
Around March Madness, it comes up more, but it was a while ago. And so, most of the players you recruit or coach, they have no idea, about, my history as a player, and they shouldn't, and as we recruit, it's about them and about their time. But it's such a fond memory for myself because I grew up watching the NCAA tournament. I always wanted to be part of March Madness and to be able to, be part of the history and win a game on a last second shot in the first round. It's something that I kind of reflect on all those Friday nights and Saturday nights in the gym, that it was worth it.
Do you ever get tired of talking about it? Or was there a moment, maybe when you got to the NBA or even after, where you were just like, I'm so tired of talking about the shot? Or has this been one of those moments where you were like, I'll talk about it till the day I die?
Yeah, I think in your life you have certain things that maybe you don't want to talk about again. And then, when God blesses you and he gives you something that you don't deserve, and, he gave me an awesome platform with that ball going in the rim, which, it very easily could have been short and not gone in. It's something that I really enjoy talking about just because there was a lot of commitment in it, a lot of hard work, a lot of faith, a lot of belief, for that moment to come out.
You played in the NBA. A lot of people don't remember this, I don't think, but you were there 6 years and you were a first-round draft pick by Houston. One story, if you have, maybe your favorite story from your time in the NBA. Maybe it was a welcome to the NBA moment. Maybe it was just something that happened, something away from the court. But do you have a story you can share from your time in the NBA?
Yeah, I got a really good one. So I had some really good teammates. And one teammate I had was Brent Price. And, the Price family, very strong in their faith. And so, being a rookie and having Brent kind of look out for me on the road and different things was a gift, from God, that I had a Christian mentor right there with me in my first year in the NBA. We also had another, probably one of the best teammates I've ever had was Charles Barkley. Mm-hmm. And so one time we were on a plane and the plane was having some mechanical issues in the air. And, Charles has an unbelievable quick wit, as we all know, an unbelievable sense of humor, as we both know. And he goes, I don't know, if this plane goes down, what's going to happen to everyone else? But he goes, me, Brent Price, and Bryce Drew, we're going to heaven. and it was kind of a tense moment. And here's him, cracking jokes throughout the whole plane, yelling it throughout. And, it was such a great time for me to get to hang around, a Brent Price, a Charles Barkley, other teammates that I had. I just really learned a lot, about life, but then also, from a basketball side that helped shape my coaching career, things that these guys would say in the locker room or on the court that helps me relate more to the players, I think.
I was just going to ask you that. How did playing in the NBA, do you think, help you as a coach and where God has brought you today? Because obviously you play for your dad and you replace your dad. And so you have your dad's influence as a coach on you, but going to the NBA and being around those guys, how did that help you in terms of who you are today as a coach?
Yeah, I think I view it, like academically, it's kind of like getting your master's. You learn a lot about the game, you have a lot of things, and then you go and you learn the ins and outs, and you learn a little bit more, and you go a little bit deeper. And, you're playing about 100 games a year with exhibition and playoffs. And so you're learning, 100 different scouting reports, different systems you're playing against. You're seeing the ups and downs of how players react and what coaches say, and do players respond to it? Do they not respond to it? And it was like I was going to school for years and got to learn so much in those locker rooms about being in that moment. And those moments, again, hopefully I can remember them all and be able to carry them out when those circumstances come up in our locker rooms or during our timeouts or after a big win or after a tough loss, because you see so many of those, throughout those 6 years.
Last couple questions here with Bryce Drew on Sports Spectrum. So we talked about your dad, Homer, former college coach. You replaced him at Valpo. Your brother Scott is coaching at Baylor. Had a great team last year, obviously, before COVID hit. So when you guys all get together, are you always talking shop, or do you try to not talk shop during family time and talk about anything else but basketball?
Yeah, there's always probably a segment in there of talking shop, but it's great. We have my brother has 3 kids. I have 1 son. My sister has 4, and so there's so much going on with the grandkids when we're together that usually monopolizes that time. One of our funnest thing is going fishing, taking some of the boys and going fishing. So usually catching fish trumps basketball talk. For those periods of time, but then later on, maybe after dinner, then definitely basketball comes up.
So last couple questions here. Obviously you went from Valpo to Vanderbilt and you were there for a few years, but then you have what a lot of coaches have to go through. You get let go and Vanderbilt's you're no longer the coach there. What do you learn in a lesson like that, in the lows, or if you want to call it a low, but the trials, the difficulties, the uncertainties on finding out that you're not going to be coaching anymore for a specific team and you're moving on? What are you learning in that time before another opportunity, when God opens up the door, shows you? What's that lesson that you learned there?
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons in there. I think that I took from it. And, at the time when I was let go, like I wanted to jump back in right away. I wanted to get a job right away, competitive, want to start winning. And, I had some really good godly counsel, tell me, you should probably just take the year off. You worked so hard these last few years and, really reflect a lot. And so I was able to go work at ESPN, which was a great blessing to do that. I learned so much working for them and really enjoyed my time. But going a year away, it brought me back to more of things that I enjoyed in my life. I got so busy working, I didn't get to spend as much time at home. I didn't get to spend as much time on myself, doing things that I really enjoyed, throughout most of my life. And it really got me back to a stronger foundation, moving forward. Also, I think the reflection, you always reflect on things you wish you would have done different, things that you liked that you did. And so it was a great year just to iron out a lot of, emotions through it. And, through it all, my wife and I, we made a list, and it was a very short list of schools that we thought that if they ever came open, like these are jobs we would look at. If not, we were just really saying, God, show us what you want us to do. And I knew I wanted to coach and win. So thankfully, when GCU opened, my wife and I, obviously we came and saw campus, and after seeing it, my wife was ecstatic. I was ecstatic. She was like, basically now here's part of the reason why we know what we've gone through this last year, to be able to get to this point. And so it's definitely a walk of faith. It's still a walk of faith, but we know God has us exactly where he wants us for this moment in time.
That's great. Real quick, do you have a Bible verse that's sort of a life verse for you, one that you cling to?
I do. Colossians 3:23. And that's been with me again since my college days. Whatever your task, work heartily as in serving the Lord and not men. And so that it rings true in so many things. I've gotten caught up a lot in my life that you worry about what others think, you worry about what the media thinks, what others are saying about you, and so that kind of just cuts it all and says, hey, it only matters what my Lord and Savior thinks. And so that's one that I go to a lot.
That's a great verse, Colossians 3:23. Bryce Drew, thanks, my friend. We'll have to get you back on, and we'll tell some more stories. All the best to you with Grand Canyon University, and hopefully a basketball season this year. We're believing it. We're hoping for it. All the best to you, my friend. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for what you do.
Many thanks to Bryce Drew for joining us here on Sports Spectrum. Grand Canyon University men's basketball coach. We wish him and the team nothing but the best in the 2020-2021 season that we hope goes through and is completed during this weird time with the pandemic and COVID-19. But we wish him and Grand Canyon nothing but the best, and thankful to him for joining us here today on the show. We thank you as well. We thank our partners, IJM and Compassion International. IJM's website, you can check out what they're doing. Go to ijm.org/TF, and then Compassion International with this awesome initiative. FillTheStadium.com is the website to learn more and donate. FillTheStadium.com. We also thank you for joining us here today on Sports Spectrum and tuning in to our show. It means a lot. Even just clicking play and listening to our podcast, it means so much that you would take the time to join us and to check us out. Please do check out our website, sportspectrum.com. That's our home base for our content here on Sports Spectrum and all that we do with the Sports Spectrum podcast, with our website, with the magazine. And then if you need to reach me directly, you can reach us via email. Jason@sportspectrum.com is my email address. Jason@sportspectrum.com. Lastly, whatever app that you listen to this podcast on, click subscribe so that you never miss an episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast. We got tons of episodes out there, 600 plus episodes and interviews and conversations that we've had. By clicking that subscribe button, it helps you never miss an episode of our Sports Spectrum podcast. Thanks again for tuning into the show. My name is Jason Romano. This is Sports Spectrum's podcast, part of the Sports Spectrum Podcast Network, and we'll see you next time right here on the show. Have a great rest of your day.